It was meant to be a relaxing Saturday afternoon. Armed with my cherished float in one arm and a chilled lemonade in the other, sunglasses perfectly perched, I was ready for a much-needed dip in my pool. As I opened my back door and began my approach, a shrill voice cut through the summer air like an old, creaky saw. "Excuse me, the pool is closed for an HOA event. You'll need to leave." I froze, staring at a stranger standing by my own pool, clad in a wide-brimmed sun hat and oversized sunglasses, clutching a clipboard as if she were organizing a major event. Behind her, guests in Hawaiian shirts socialized, sipping punch and snapping selfies in front of a banner that read, "Welcome to Cheryl's Summer Splash Bash." Blinking twice, I wondered if I had stumbled into a parallel universe. But no, I was standing in my own backyard, confronted by a woman directing me to leave. Bemused, I chuckled, assuming it was a simple misunderstanding. "You must be new around here," I said, stepping forward. "This is my house." Her lips tightened as though insulted, and she replied, "That's irrelevant. The HOA reserved the space for the afternoon. I'm Cheryl, the organizer. You weren't on the RSVP list, and your presence is unsettling the guests." She gestured to a group that clearly didn't recognize me, whispering discreetly behind their plastic cups. I stared at them blankly, my lemonade sweating in my grasp. Is this some sort of prank? Cheryl approached, clicking her pen with the authority of a judge ready to deliver a verdict. "You can return after 6, she said, turning towards the bar set up near my patio furniture. Furniture I had personally purchased, but now arranged as though it were part of an HOA showcase. With great restraint, I finally spoke, my voice dripping with forced politeness. "Madam, this pool is on private property, mine. You're all trespassing." She rolled her eyes dramatically, the sound almost audible. "No, dear," she responded condescendingly, which made my blood boil. "This neighborhood falls under HOA Code 47B, which permits the use of shared amenities for community events, the pool included." I surveyed the area, pointing to various items. "What shared amenities?" "That's my shed, my barbecue grill, and my flamingo float, which I recently bought from Target. The receipt is still in my rubbish bin." Cheryl smirked, flipping a laminated page on her clipboard. "That's up for discussion," she said. "The spirit of the HOA is about inclusion. If we start drawing lines about ownership, where does it end? We're meant to be a community." Stunned, I wondered what alternate legal reality she inhabited. I had owned the house for 5 years, purchasing it before the HOA was even conceived. My property lay outside their jurisdiction, a fact I'd confirmed time and again after the HOA's debut newsletter tried charging me £50 for sidewalk beautification, despite my absence of a sidewalk. Yet here was Cheryl, insisting my backyard was a public venue. Attempting to remain composed, I stepped over to my patio table and picked up a coaster decorated with a picture of my dog. "Do public venues typically have coasters with the owner's dog on them?" I asked. Cheryl barely glanced. "Honestly, it's a bit tacky," she remarked, "which is why I moved it." She pointed to a box in the corner filled with my belongings, towels, magazines, a Bluetooth speaker, all displaced for tiki torches and floral centerpieces. Furious at the audacity, I stormed back inside, nearly tripping over my cat, and retrieved the deed folder from a kitchen drawer. Marching back out, I thrust the document, highlighting the parcel lines, in her direction. "Read this," I demanded. "This is a private residence. Your HOA party is illegal on private land." Unfazed, Cheryl replied, "That's a matter for the HOA board. We're not about to spoil the event due to a straightforward misunderstanding. You're welcome to email us, but not during party hours." With that, she signaled to the DJ, who was evidently regretting his involvement. Up went the yacht rock, feeling personally affronting. As I stood there bewildered, a guest accidentally bumped into me, spilling sangria from his red plastic cup. "Great party," he commented before asking how I knew Cheryl. Maintaining eye contact, I replied, "I own the pool." He paused mid-sip, puzzled over whether I was jesting. "Wait, this isn't the HOA clubhouse?" he asked. I didn't deem it worthy of a response. Shortly after, 2 individuals, clearly private security rather than police, approached me. "Mate," one of them began hesitantly, "we were informed this is HOA property and you're not allowed here. Mind having a chat by the gate?" I goggled at them as if they were speaking gibberish. "Do I look like I need an escort out of my own garden?" I queried. They faltered. "We're just following Cheryl's instructions. She hired us for today's event," one explained. I laughed so heartily, almost spilling my lemonade. "You're about to feel rather foolish," I quipped. "Sure, let's walk to the gate." As we moved via the side path to the gate, We encountered a grandiose sign posted by Cheryl declaring a private event HOA members only. It was fixed to my very own fence. Tear it down I did, tossing it in the bin. Congratulations, you're accomplices to trespassing, I informed them. The tall guard rubbed his head. Perhaps we should speak to someone from the HOA board. Taking out my phone, I messaged Brian, the bona fide HOA president with whom I actually shared a rapport. He swiftly replied, "That's definitely not an authorized event. Cheryl lacks any planning authority. Document everything." I captured images of the attendees, the decorations, the sign, and Cheryl indignantly directing a caterer over shrimp skewers. Turning back to the guards, I remarked, "Looks like Cheryl misled you. You can depart before things escalate or remain and feature in the report." That was enough. They nodded awkwardly and stepped aside. Slowly, I retraced my steps towards the pool, seething with unvoiced anger. Passing Cheryl, I offered a mock salute. "Remember this moment," I advised. "It'll be the last party you host here." She derisively countered, "What will you do, drain the pool?" Pausing, I turned back to her with a smile, my plan now crystal clear. Under the relentless sun, the strangest of events unfolded that I had inadvertently hosted. The smell of burnt barbecue combined with loud laughter from strangers filled the air, as I stood assertively on property I owned yet was treated as an intruder. Cheryl's audacity had transcended ridiculous to verging on delusional. It seemed like a reverse burglary, where the culprits brazenly celebrated, challenging me to intervene. More frustrating was her deception. Many guests genuinely believed Cheryl was magnanimously sharing her pool as a gesture of goodwill. "She's so thoughtful, opening up her pool for the neighborhood," I overheard one woman telling another. My disbelief almost choked me as I stealthily sent Brian further updates. Cheryl sauntered past arrogantly, glancing sideways. "If you're not leaving, at least stay out of the way. It's a significant moment for the HOA." Exhaling deeply, a breath akin to the calm before a storm, I knew unleashing my plan wasn't opportune. The timing had to be just right, as justice served dramatically is most relished. Back at my patio, a man in a fedora began toasting Cheryl, lauding her as the community's pillar. "Cheers," people chorused around the pool while Cheryl bowed dramatically. I applauded slowly, deliberately, like a film antagonist maintaining undivided eye contact, momentarily unsettling her smug facade. We both understood, neither was conceding. It now boiled down to patience and cunning. As others immersed themselves in drinks and raucous yacht rock, I quietly slipped to the pool shed. It was a small wooden edifice painstakingly crafted and painted in harmony with the house, with a padlock usually latched, yet not secured. Within lay my tools, chemicals, and pool supplies. I equipped myself with some maintenance tools and my latest secret weapon, a hefty metal valve wrench connected to the pool's drainage system. Kneeling down quietly, I turned the valve just enough to start a gradual flow. It wasn't meant to be obvious. I aimed for discreet sabotage. Inside, everyone was merrily unaware of the water slowly disappearing as they sipped their cocktails. The atmosphere was festive. Children splashed around while parents lounged, and Cheryl carried on like the queen of the neighborhood as the DJ switched to upbeat pop, prompting some guests to dance awkwardly at the shallow end. Positioned near the grill area, I feigned checking my phone while eavesdropping. Occasionally, someone would mention the pool's low water level or cooler temperature. Cheryl dismissed these remarks, attributing them to the filter cycling. I knew better, it was karma at work. A particularly loud, tipsy guest shouted, "Why is my float hitting the ground?" Cheryl attempted to brush it off, but more people began noticing the diminishing water. A child sat bewildered in ankle-deep water as Cheryl's confident smile faltered. She approached me, her veneer of poise cracking, and hissed, "What did you do?" I sipped my lemonade, replying, "Just observing the community spirit as the HOA promotes." Guest complaints grew louder, with a woman yelling, "I've scraped my knee on the pool's floor, this is unsafe." Another man tripped stepping out, knocking over one of Cheryl's tables, shrimp cocktails splattering across the lawn. People started leaving, muttering about poor organization and broken promises. Someone questioned, did Cheryl truly have permission for this? Seizing my moment, I announced loudly, "There's no permission or HOA authority here. She misled you all, this is private land." Shock rippled through the crowd. Cheryl tried damage control, claiming I was a troublesome homeowner. I waved my phone, ready to show texts from the real HOA president on his way, which caused remaining skeptical guests to distance themselves from Cheryl. Her fantasy crumbled as she tried rallying her friends, but her voice cracked and nobody cheered her on anymore. I hadn't needed threats or police intervention. A simple valve twist and some timely truths were enough to dismantle her little empire. When Brian arrived with a bemused police officer, the scene resembled an abandoned post-storm festival. The decorations were drooping and soggy, the DJ packed his gear away. Cheryl stood at the pool's edge, arms folded, attempting to maintain dignity amidst defeat. Brian surveyed the chaos and sighed, asking, "Cheryl, what did you do this time?" She remained silent as the officer inquired about the event. Pointing at me, Brian clarified, "It's private and unauthorized." Saying nothing, I stood at the pool's edge, looking at the remaining inch of swirling water with a smile. Cheryl had tried to eject me from my own pool, but I drained it in front of her guests. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over my disheveled backyard, as guests murmured their farewells, avoiding eye contact with Cheryl on their way out. My sandals tapped gently against the pavement as I surveyed the aftermath of the once lively celebration now resembling a desolate wasteland. Near the pool, a statue-like figure stood frozen while deflated balloons, overturned chairs and abandoned cups drifted in remaining puddles. This, I realized, was no longer just a retaliation. It had become a form of performance art. The scene was a testament to justice laid upon Cheryl's entitlement. Inside, I swapped my wet shirt for a dry one and returned to find Cheryl still in the same position. Her arms folded, lips sealed into a sharp line. She hadn't moved for ages, her expression a silent fury akin to someone on the brink of chaos in a reality TV show meltdown. But this was real life, not a scripted drama, and real consequences followed when one trespassed for a party in another's backyard. Brian was in conversation with a police officer by the front gate, gesturing towards the pool and the house, calmly detailing my exemption from the HOA. The officer appeared increasingly irritated, as if realizing his Saturday was now engulfed by petty suburban issues he wished to avoid, and frankly, I couldn't blame him. The whole affair seemed better suited for late-night satire than our serene cul-de-sac. Moving to the back of the shed, I adjusted the valve slightly more, watching the remaining water drain away in gratifying swirls, symbolic of letting arrogance vanish just like the water. Cheryl had filled my garden with hauteur, and I allowed the water lines to reclaim it. At last Cheryl spoke, her voice shaky with restrained anger. "You have no idea what you've done." I turned to her, eyebrows raised. "Oh, I think I know exactly what I've done." Her eyes burned with intensity. This was meant to be a celebration, a chance for people to see what I could offer to this neighborhood. There were realtors, vendors, HOA volunteers. I was forging connections. I chuckled, leaning casually against the fence. "So the plan was to springboard your career from my property, using my pool as your base? And then? Claim some sort of community influencer status." Her silence was a response in itself. The DJ had long gone, his tip jar empty, while the catering crew, visibly displeased, packed up uneaten meals and a half-melted cake still on the patio table, the words "Thanks Cheryl" sliding down into an indecipherable mess. A caterer muttered about forwarding the invoice to the HOA, prompting a laugh from me, knowing full well the bill would undoubtedly land directly on Cheryl's desk. Taking stock of the chaos, I decided it was time for literal cleanup. From my shed, I retrieved a broom, pushing soaked napkins and fractured cups into a corner pile. Cheryl observed silently, as though viewing me as the antagonist for tidying her wreckage. Eventually she advanced, pointing an impeccably manicured finger. "You'll deeply regret humiliating me like this." Meeting her gaze, I replied, "No, Cheryl, the regret will be yours for assuming people like me would tolerate such disregard. This isn't just about the pool, it's about respect. You lacked it for me, my home, and now you lack it for yourself." The police officer and Brian approached, their discussion evidently over. The officer addressed Cheryl directly. "Ma'am, the incident has been recorded. You're formally trespassed from this property. If you return, charges may be filed. It's advisable to leave." Although Cheryl opened her mouth to protest, the officer's authoritative tone offered no room for negotiation. Brian added, more sympathetically, "Your involvement in HOA functions will be under review. You may attend meetings, but organizing events or acting in any official capacity is revoked." Cheryl's face crumpled, eyes twitching with anxiety, as her humiliation was completed. Her downfall wasn't merely about losing control of the party, it was the dismantling of her self-crafted grandeur, the collapse of her imagined stature. The spotlight had faded. The curtains had drawn, and all that remained was a deflated flamingo float and her bruised ego. With a little dignity intact, she made her exit in silence, her heels echoing a somber rhythm on the concrete. As one of the few lingering guests still scavenging for leftovers, muttered an awkward, "Yikes." She disappeared into the shadows without further confrontation, leaving behind an illusion shattered. I paused briefly to absorb the quiet. A gentle breeze stirred the palm fronds, while my garden bore the distinct aroma of chlorine mingled with fruit punch and charred sausages, a chaotic yet oddly satisfying smell of victory. I gathered the final soggy napkin, sealed it in a rubbish bag and felt a pat on the shoulder from Brian. "I've never seen anything like it," he remarked. "You handled it better than I would have." I replied with a nod, resolved that if she was going to host a party uninvited, she'd remember it indefinitely. With daylight fading, I stood by the empty pool, reflecting on the serenity mirrored in the twilight sky. The peace was tangible, my space reclaimed from Cheryl's audacity. She had tried to take over my domain, but her entitlement had only served to teach her an overdue lesson. The following morning ushered in an unexpected calm. The sky was clear, the air refreshingly cool, and my backyard, still bearing traces of yesterday's chaos, was at peace. No tiki decor, no blaring music, no strangers treading my patio. It felt like waking from a peculiar dream, save for the empty pool and a crumpled, "Thanks Cheryl" banner bearing testament to its reality. With a fresh cup of coffee in hand, I walked barefoot across the slightly damp concrete, reveling in the tranquility. As I began tidying up the remnants of the day, a task involving soggy decorations and half-eaten plates, I reflected on how casually Cheryl had overstepped her bounds. It was more than the party, it was her brazen presumptuousness. Even after her public embarrassment and a stern warning from the authorities, I was certain she wouldn't retreat easily. People like Cheryl channel humiliation into a drive for revenge. Indeed, by mid-morning Brian informed me via text. He'd just concluded a call with some agitated HOA members. Surprisingly, their ire wasn't directed at me but at Cheryl. Word had spread swiftly, the caterers were demanding payment, the DJ was publicly venting, and footage of Cheryl's defiant poolside antics was circulating on community Facebook groups, dramatically titled "Karen's HOA Pool Takeover Gone." Brian shared that the HOA board had called an urgent meeting to officially suspend Cheryl from her roles and confirmed that my property was never under their authority. I thanked him, acknowledging his support, though internally aware this saga was far from over. Cheryl wasn't one to fade after a solitary defeat. By midday the pool was nearly restored. I scrubbed its base, washed away all footprints from the deck, and meticulously rearranged my patio furniture. Normality seemed at last within reach, or so it appeared until I heard tires crunching on the gravel outside. Looking up from the pool pump, I spotted a sleek silver SUV creeping along the perimeter of my property. It didn't turn into the driveway but rolled slowly past as though trying to go unnoticed. Yet I recognized the driver, Cheryl. Her sunglasses absent, her face was pale, her expression impassive. She glided past like a specter, leaving only a chill in her wake. As I watched her drive away, I remained still, indifferent to her attempts at intimidation or making me doubt my actions. This was my territory, my pool, my home, and she had trespassed. I had taken steps to halt her incursion. If she wanted to sit in her SUV and scowl like some bargain basement Bond villain, she could waste all the petrol she wished. Turning away, I resumed my tasks. Later that evening, I decided to indulge in a bit of mischief. I retrieved a large wooden sign I'd crafted months before and never found a use for. Bold black letters declared, "Private pool, not HOA property. Trespassers will be drained," alongside a hand-drawn illustration of a deflating pool float for dramatic effect. I affixed it to the shed facing the gate, a blend of caution and a private jest. Those who'd experienced Cheryl's fiasco would immediately grasp its meaning. Others might think twice before trying any HOA tomfoolery near my property again. At twilight, Brian arrived, worn out but amused. He handed me an official memo signed by the board stating my property was exempt from all HOA activities, rules, and fees. Smiling, I read it while Brian recounted how Cheryl had attended the meeting with absurd claims, arguing boundary ambiguities and historical community use entitled her access to my pool. She even brought a color-coded map but was politely laughed out of the room. As we stood by the now pristine pool, Brian shook his head, noting he'd witnessed many petty disputes in the neighborhood, but this was next level. I agreed, offering him a soda from the cooler by the patio. We clinked cans like generals who'd emerged from a ludicrous battle. Just as we savored this newfound peace, my phone chimed again. A message from a barely acquainted neighbor attached to a screenshot from the Nextdoor app. Cheryl had posted a lengthy rant, claiming she was bullied, that some property owners resisted community unity, and she was contemplating suing the HOA for defamation. The responses were a treasure trove. Numerous neighbors shared their tales of Cheryl's overreach and rule fabrication. One remarked, "She once told me I couldn't hang my laundry as it violated the community aesthetic." Another recounted, "She screamed at my 10-year-old for riding a scooter too loudly." Someone else commented on her audacity to host a party at another's pool, which ended in mid-splash as it was drained. The internet had accomplished what the HOA couldn't, unmasking Cheryl's full, Karen energy in vivid detail. There would be no recovery from this, not with evidence, videos, screenshots, and a community ready to rebuff her slightest move. As evening descended and stars emerged, I sat at the pool's edge, feet hanging into the deep end. Though it would take a day or two to refill, the empty pool stood as a symbol, not only of triumph but of newly drawn boundaries. Cheryl would never cross these again, not physically, socially, or emotionally. I had achieved this without shouting, legal battles, or fists, armed only with a wrench, a camera, a considered drain, and immense patience. One chapter remained in this strange saga, but its outcome was clear. Cheryl had burned each bridge she'd attempted to construct with cardboard and glitter. As for me, I was soon to host my own pool party, a genuine affair with real invitations and one unyielding rule printed prominently: no Karens allowed. Time passed and the neighborhood settled into a serene silence that follows a storm, a cleansing calm. Cheryl had disappeared from her usual HOA walks and post rounds, clipboard in hand like a self-important mall cop. She had retreated to her lair to plot the next passive-aggressive revolt, no longer of concern. Her absence was a blessing. My pool was refilled, glistening beneath the spring sun, and tranquility returned to my oasis of autonomy. But the true delight lay not only in the quiet but in the... Once reality set in, the change was palpable. Visitors began arriving with compliments in tow, praising not only the pool but my handling of the entire debacle. Some had caught wind through hearsay, while others had seen the viral footage of Cheryl floundering as the water drained away. Most, however, had come across the complete tale through word of mouth. Suddenly, I was a minor folk hero to the more reserved locals who had long felt stifled by Cheryl's insincere rules. One chap revealed she had once insisted he repaint his mailbox to better fit the neighborhood's aesthetic. A lady, nearly 70, shared how Cheryl had shamed her for her wind chimes, claiming they disrupted the community's harmony. It seemed I hadn't just drained a swimming pool, I had dethroned a self-styled queen. The Homeowners Association board issued a freshly printed neighborhood policy brochure, featuring a new segment dedicated to respecting private property boundaries. My lot was boldly outlined on the map, underscoring its non-HOA status, transforming Cheryl's intended mark of shame into my shield. No more mistaking my yard as communal turf. According to Brian, Cheryl was officially relieved from any committee roles, and her plans to redefine neighborhood culture were shelved without ceremony. Her regime of counterfeit events and unsolicited newsletters had ended. But poetic justice often has a surprising coda. That weekend, I arranged a modest barbecue by the pool, close-knit neighbors only, with burgers, mellow music, and laughter that declared our reclaimed liberty. I sent genuine invitations printed on cardstock with a handwritten note emphasizing it was a private affair, cheekily stating that it was sans Cheryl. The invitees understood precisely what it signified. They arrived with folding chairs, children dressed in swimsuits, and bottles of fizzy drink. Someone brought a homemade float shaped like a shark named Cheryl, which drew hearty laughter from all of us. The atmosphere was warm and easy, the type of gathering Cheryl would have loved to take credit for had she been involved. We toasted beneath fairy lights, cooked an excess of hot dogs, and played a yacht rock playlist, this time with irony and amusement. A moment came when the children recreated the infamous draining incident, splashing and pretending to gasp as their floats went under. The adults chuckled, capturing videos, transforming what had been a vexing saga into local lore. Taking control of the narrative was empowering. Around 9 p.m., as the sun surrendered its last light, a familiar silver SUV cruised past my home, Cheryl. She didn't stop or roll down the window, merely observed. Her face was visible, illuminated by the lights strung along my gate. She witnessed the crowd, heard the music, and perhaps caught the jokey echoes in her name. Yet, she dared not join. Her reign toppled not by disputes or legal battles, but by undeniable truth known to everyone. There was no spin for rescue. Turning toward my guests, I raised my glass and declared, "It's remarkable how serene things become once certain individuals cease treating your pool as their stage." Laughter erupted anew with someone proposing, "Let's make this an annual tradition." Another agreed, dubbing it the Karen-free Splash Bash. The chant caught on like a motto. In that moment, the HOA's grip on the neighborhood loosened, not entirely but sufficiently for everyone to breathe freely. The soiree continued deep into the night, a scene epitomizing wholesome enjoyment untethered from rules or fabricated authority, rooted in mutual respect, absent of community as weapon behavior. As guests departed with gratitude and pledges to return, I stood alone in the moonlit yard. The pool gleamed, undisturbed, garage-free, void of pretentious signs. Peace had returned. Gathering up leftover cups and plates, I packed up the cooler before taking a final stroll around the tranquil pool deck. Flawless, it was unmistakably mine. I paused by the shed where the valve wrench still hung clean and dry, my modest tool of justice. No longer needed, it remained a symbol, a testament that some battles require nothing more than steadfast resolve. There are times when raising one's voice or engaging in conflict isn't necessary. Sometimes simply turning a valve allows the water to speak for itself. As I switched off the patio lights and made my way indoors, my gaze wandered to the road where her SUV had driven by earlier. Now, nothing but a gentle breeze stirred the leaves. With a quiet smile, I closed the door and locked it behind me, not out of fear but with a sense of closure. Cheryl had made her move, and I had responded in a way she hadn't anticipated. There was no anger, no escalation, just serene, deliberate mischief. Her tale would linger in local conversations, in muted discussions during neighborhood association meetings, and in the delighted play of children, mimicking her misfortune with inflatable toys. Meanwhile, Cheryl would always be remembered, not as the woman who united the community, but as the lesson learned about treating someone's residence as if it were a public facility. She certainly wouldn't be receiving another invitation.